Hello everyone. This is the 40th part of the story, I'm Vōldēmōrt. Chapter 243, Motivation. Brother, you're gay? Thor asked as he overheard the entire conversation between his brother and his mother's new student. Not finding the words to say, Loki simply scoffed and gave his brother a scathing look as he stormed past and retreated down the hallway. Shrugging his shoulders, as he doesn't care one way or another for his brother's sexual proclivities, Thor walked up to Tom's open door and knocked a few times before entering. Hello, Midgardian friend. Thor booms as he enters the room. How's it going, Thor? Tom replies with a smile. Although Thor has been a bit of a letdown since their first meeting, he's still a good person that treats people kindly. He just needs to get his reality check and he'll be the Thor Tom knew and loved from the movies. I've been well, my friend. I heard from my mother that you arrived and came to welcome you to Asgard. He laughs happily as he pats Tom on the back a few times. Thanks for the kind welcome, Thor. I was about to tour the place. Do you want to tag along? Tom asked as he gestures to the door. Of course, I would be happy to show you around. Follow my lead. Thor says as he pulls Tom out of the room. I'll give you a tour as you did for us yesterday. Being pulled around by an overly excited Thor, Tom was shown the main attractions of the palace. Along the way, everyone they passed would stop and bow towards Thor while throwing curious looks Tom's way. After a pretty decent tour, for a musclehead like Thor being the guide, they somehow wound up in one of the few training yards located on palace grounds. The place is filled with soldiers and other people, training to their utmost limit. When Thor and Tom arrived, they didn't clear out the whole place, but they did give the prince and his guest a wide berth. Thor is a well-known battle maniac and usually needs the space or else the people in his surroundings become collateral damage. Thor really is a battle junkie, isn't he? Tom thought as he knows Thor must have planned this. Since we're here, why don't we have a quick match? I haven't tested my new Master Bolt to its fullest yet. Thor says as Tom rolls his eyes. Sure, I accept as thanks for the tour you gave me. Tom nods. 10 minutes later. The same courtyard that was bustling with people training their bodies to the fullest is now deathly quiet. Everyone there saw a scene that they never thought possible. Their prince, the invincible thunder-wielding Thor, lost to this man that many of them have never seen before. On the floor of the courtyard, Thor could be seen covered in bruises and panting for even the slightest bit of oxygen to fill his lungs. Huff. Good fight, Huff, Thor says as he stays planted on the floor. In contrast to the tired and beaten crown prince, Tom stood lazily across from him without so much as a single injury. Thor's use of the Master Bolt definitely boosted his overall power. It gave him the ability to throw lightning at long range while also boosting his already powerful lightning affinity. It just wasn't enough of a boost to give Tom any sort of challenge whatsoever. Thor, is the lightning you wield yours, or does it originate from your hammer? Tom asks, already knowing the answer from the movies. Huff. It's mine. Thor replies. Can you use your lightning without Mjolnir or the Master Bolt? Tom asked. Well, no. He says as he starts to regain his normal breathing. Huh, then why are you using these weapons as a crutch when you haven't fully mastered your lightning? Do you want to be this weak for the rest of your long life? Tom asked, knowing that this would light a fire under Thor's butt. In the movies, it took a serious ass-whooping in Asgard being destroyed by his sister Hela for Thor to master using his lightning without any sort of aid. But I. Thor stutters as he looked at his trusted hammer. What? Did you think that everyone needs a weapon to harness their power? Tom asks as he walks forward with a hand held out and summons lightning to dance between his fingers. He's not an expert when it comes to this, so that's the best he can do when it comes to lightning, but it's a hell of a lot more than Thor can currently do without his crutches. Thor's eyes opened wide in surprise as he laid quietly on the ground with his entire worldview shattered. It seems that you've neglected your training and studies in favor of mindless fighting, Tom says with a disappointed shake of his head. I refuse to fight you again until you can at least summon your own lightning without aid. Saying this, Tom walks past Thor without another word, leaving a shocked Thor and a stunned crowd behind. Chapter 244, Pōttēr Guardian? On the same day Tom sparred with Thor and gave him a kick in the butt to start mastering his lightning, he was invited to dinner with the royal family, which sounded like it would be more annoying than anything else. Although Tom just wanted to enjoy his dinner and get some sleep on his newest guardian bed, which is fluffy and extremely comfortable by the way, he attended the dinner as not to cause any strife between him and Odin. He already has one member of their family that wants to get some sort of revenge on him, so it's best to keep that number as low as possible. For now at least. After being picked up and escorted to the dining hall by one of the maids, Tom took a seat where he was told and waited in an elegant but empty hall for the others to arrive. Am I supposed to wait for them? Tom thought as he admires all of the fine silverware carefully placed on the table. Thankfully, Tom didn't have to wait long as Thor practically threw open the doors and rushed inside. He worked up a huge appetite during the beatdown that his new Midgardian friend had given him. Thomas! Thor shouted as he entered the room and took the seat directly next to Tom. I didn't know you'd be here. Let us fill our stomachs together as newfound friends. Sure thing, Thor. Tom gives him a nod and peeks over at the door. So, how long does it usually take for the others to get here? Well, Father is always busy, so he will most definitely be late. Mother should be here soon and Loki likes to be what he calls fashionably late. He won't show up until Father does. As Thor says this, Frigga comes gliding through the door with the grace of a queen and sits at her small throne near the head of the table. Mother, you've arrived just in time. Did I now? She says with a smile towards Thor. Hello, Tom. How has your stay been thus far? After a few minutes of small talk with Thor and Frigga, Odin and Loki arrived and the feast finally began. Although Tom is in another world across the universe from the Earth he knows and loves, somehow the spread of food before him looked very similar to what can be found on his home planet. Do you eat this every day, or was this made especially for me? Tom asked Thor, who is sat directly next to him. I see you've noticed. Before Thor could swallow his mouthful of food, Frigga chimed in. Yes, I had Heimdall compile recipes from Midgard and sent some soldiers off to get ingredients. Did the chefs cook everything to your liking? Yeah, it's perfect. Though I was hoping for a more foreign spread to try. Tom says with a hint of disappointment. Then we'll hold another feast tomorrow filled with all things Asgardian. Thor, who finally swallowed his mouthful of food, exclaims jovially. There are only a few things Thor likes as much as fighting, and one of those things are feasts similar to this one. Frigga nodded in approval and said she would have the servants prepare everything. Soon, the conversation started moving towards Earth, as Odin seemed to be fishing for information. Are there other magical communities on Midgard? Odin asks with a knowing look in his eyes. I'm sure that you already know the answer to that question, old man. Tom states plainly as he takes a drink from a very expensive and extravagant-looking cup. There's no way that Odin hasn't ordered Heimdall to investigate Earth with his all-seeing eyes. At first, Tom wasn't sure if he would be able to find the wizarding world, but now it seems like that question has been answered. Suddenly, the happy mood of the feast disappears as Tom and Odin stare down one another. The only person in the room that seems to have not noticed anything is Thor, who obliviously continues to shovel food down his throat. Then I'll be blunt. Odin says as his gaze doesn't leave Tom for a single moment. Why weren't we told of the other magical community on Midgard? You didn't ask, and it wasn't my place to say anything. Tom says with a shrug. What can you tell us about them? Frigga asked, trying to smooth over the situation. I'm actually one of them, truthfully. Tom reveals as if it didn't matter and went on to explain a short overview of the wizarding world. These people are born with magic inside of them? That's very familiar to how our bodies work. Frigga muttered with a puzzled expression. Wait a minute. Are wizards descendants of Asgardians that came to Earth a long time ago? Tom thought as he saw the looks on Odin and Frigga's faces. Am I a small part Asgardian? Chapter 245, Loki's Revenge. Dinner was very quiet after the realization that wizards may be descended from visiting Asgardians. It wasn't just Tom that thought this way as well. Everyone besides Thor, who was too busy stuffing his face, came to the same conclusion. Once Tom returned to his room, he started putting two and two together even further than before. First, wizards are known to live a lot longer than those without magic. On the other hand, Asgardians have an extremely long lifespan that's far beyond the longest living wizard, who happens to be Barry Wee Willie Winkle. Born August 14, 1236. Though, an age like that is nothing to an Asgardian, who lives for thousands and thousands of years. This could be explained by the fact that wizards would be only a small part Asgardian. They would only gain a small portion of the Asgardian benefits after all, which isn't so bad compared to normal humans. That explains how some humans on Earth have magic, but it doesn't explain the magical animals and plants. Maybe it isn't an Asgardian thing. Tom thought as he fell asleep that night, unsure of his own conclusions. On the other hand, Odin, Frigga, and Loki fully believe that wizards are part Asgardian. When they have been to Midgard all those years ago, not a single person had a drop of magic in their blood that Asgardians had. The most magic they could do back then was the kind with a hat and a rabbit, so they all knew for a fact that wizards weren't a thing before their arrival on Midgard. They were just unsure of how to handle this situation. Well, the king and queen of Asgard were unsure of what to do, but Loki, the ever-conniving trickster that he is, had already started scheming about how he will conquer the wizarding world and rule it as a god-king should. All these schemes started forming as Loki planned to use the wizarding world in some way to also become king of Asgard. Why should his foolhardy and dim-witted brother become king when he is such a better choice? He studies and puts the work in while his brother simply fights, fucks, and stuffs his gullet. Don't get it wrong, Loki loves a good meal, a thrilling battle, and a wild fuck, but those things come second to his dream of becoming king of Asgard, lording over all who look down on him in favor of his brother. Just the thought sends shivers down his spine. Soon, time passed and Tom started to become familiar with Asgard, or at least the area of Asgard he's currently in. Tom has explored all that he's allowed to inside and around the palace, so he set his sights on the city outside the palace gates. Although Asgard is an advanced spacefaring race, they aren't as advanced as you would think. At least for the average citizens, that is. They don't have much when it comes to technology. Though the little tech they do have is very advanced. The average citizen of Asgard mostly harnesses their magic to solve everyday needs. Those that didn't have a strong enough power or understanding of magic would pay for others to do what's needed. On his second day on Asgard, Tom went out alone and toured around the city. Mainly the market area where everyone was selling their very alien-looking goods. He spent the entire day just walking around and asking merchants about their wares, learning about everything Asgardian. On his third day, Tom woke up to a bit of a surprise. He didn't know how he did it, but Loki seems to have gotten a small bit of his revenge on Tom. Tom woke up in a room that wasn't his and in a bed that had company laying across from him. Hoping that he hasn't slept in a bed with some smelly guy, Tom turns and sees the beautiful Lady Sif sleeping soundly with a content smile on her face. This is bad, Tom thought as he was slowly moving to get out of bed. Thankfully, Tom likes to sleep with clothes on, so at least he wasn't naked in the bed of an unsuspecting woman. As he was just getting the covers off and had one leg out of the bed, Ltd Sif's eyes flutter open as she wipes the sleep from her eyes. Suddenly, she heard a creak in her bed and looked to the side only to see a man who is either entering or leaving her bed. Her eyes widen as she swiftly reaches for her blade. Hearing some rustling behind him, Tom leaps out of bed, barely dodging a sword swipe from the newly awakened Lady Sif. Wait. Hold on. Tom yells as he turns to see Sif holding her sword guardedly. What are you doing in my chambers? Chapter 246, Lady Sif's Rage. What are you doing in my chambers? Lady Sif yells in fury. As Tom was about to answer her question, Sif dashes forward and strikes out with her sword in a thrusting motion. Easily dodging her attack, Tom starts to get annoyed that she won't give him a chance to explain. I should have just operated out, Tom thought as he disappears before Lady Sif's eyes. Huh? Where? She says as she feels a presence standing behind her. Can you please calm down? Tom says from his place directly behind Lady Sif. Thankfully, Lady Sif doesn't sleep in the nude, but that doesn't mean she is dressed conservatively. No, she's wearing a fairly revealing pink nightgown, which is odd as she portrays herself as a serious warrior, so seeing this side of her is weirdly cute in a way. Turning around to strike out with her sword again, Sif finds that there's no one behind her, yet she can still feel that presence behind her. Look, I don't want to hurt you, and this is all a misunderstanding cultivated by an annoying trickster, who will be punished thoroughly for this. Can you just stop for a second and listen? Tom tells her carefully, hoping he won't have to start defending himself. Hearing his words, Lady Sif kept her guard up and turned around to see a familiar-looking man. She didn't attack this time, so Tom didn't bother to appear behind her again, showing himself to her clearly for the first time. Huh, you're the Queen's new student, right? Why are you in my chambers? She asks and decided not to poke Tom with the pointed end of her sword this time. Loki. Tom informs her flatly without another word to explain the details. I see, she says as the realization hits her. This is exactly something Loki would do. Especially if he was slighted, and word in the palace is that Loki has a vendetta against his mother's new student, who most likely angered the second prince in some fashion. What happened exactly? How did you end up in my chambers? She asks, still keeping her guard up as Tom could be lying. Seeing that she wasn't jumping to eradicate his existence, Tom explained how he has a sort of prank war with Loki, who seems to have taken said war a bit too far. Fine, let's say that I believe you, Sif says as she sheaths her sword and stares Tom in the eye. What are we doing to get back at him? We? Tom asked as he didn't expect her to want anything to do with this. Yes, we. Loki has had this coming for a while now. It's about time someone taught him a lesson, she says as an evil smile forms on her face. Well, I don't mind including you on the prank I've been cooking up. Tom agrees easily as she has a right to get payback after what she went through this morning. Good, I've been meaning to get revenge for a while now, Sif says as she grabs a handful of her pitch-black hair, looking at it with no small amount of annoyance mixed with what seemed to be regret or maybe sadness. Revenge? For what? Tom asked as she didn't seem to be talking about this incident. Let's just say that my hair didn't always look this color, and I nor anyone else can find a way to turn it back. She huffs and pushes her hair over her shoulder. Loki turned your hair black? Why? Tom asked curiously. Because he's a conniving little rat that only gets enjoyment out of the misery of others. Lady Sif says without the slightest bit of hesitation. Wow. Tom muttered as he didn't expect her to hate Loki so much. While Tom was shocked by the amount of hatred she carries towards the second prince of Asgard, Lady Sif was just starting to finally realize that she is dressed in her pink frilly-looking nightgown. She froze as she looked between herself and Tom, who wasn't paying attention but was still looking in her direction. Suddenly, Sif dashed forward and shoved Tom away as she ran into her walk-in closet, slamming the door behind her. Huh? What's wrong with her? Tom thought as he shrugged it off and started thinking of ways to alter his plans to include Lady Sif in some way. While Tom was thinking this, stomping footsteps could be heard from outside the door as a small contingent of palace guards came rushing towards Lady Sif's bedchambers. Is Loki trying to set me up? Tom thought as he looked around the room for any evidence of him being there. Without finding anything, Tom opens a portal and leaves. As the portal closes behind him, Sif's bedroom door slams open, and soldiers dressed for battle come pouring in with weapons at the ready. Finding the room empty, the soldiers look around and hear some shuffling from the closet door. Thinking it could be the reported intruder, the soldiers open the door without hesitation, hunting for whoever could have had the guts to sneak into Lady Sif's bedchambers. As the door opened and the inside of the closet came into view, every soldier saw something they would never forget. A butt-naked Sif changing into a new set of clothes laid out before her. The soldiers freeze and go deathly quiet as they stare straight at her. The screams of tortured soldiers rang through the palace grounds that morning. Chapter 247 Revenge, Part 1. Thankfully, once Lady Sif finished beating the guards that saw her naked, she didn't reveal that Tom was ever in her room. No one ever found out who told the guards of someone in Lady Sif's room, as the informant merely sent an anonymous letter, saying that an unidentified man crept into Lady Sif's bedchambers. As soon as Tom knew that the guards cleared out, he opened a portal into Sif's room. He could have simply walked over and knocked on the door, but then word would spread that Tom and Lady Sif spent some alone time in her bedroom, which would be annoying to deal with. Hey, sorry I had to leave. I think Loki tried to set me up. Tom says as he steps out of the portal and into Sif's room. This time, she is completely clothed in her warrior's armor with swords hanging at her sides, as to be ready and prepared for any unwanted visitors. Yes, I noticed as well. She says as she looks at Tom with a hint of annoyance. You should have warned me before leaving though. She's mad at him for leaving without warning her. If he had done so, she wouldn't have been in that embarrassing situation. Well, I didn't have time for that, sorry. Tom says apologetically. Whatever, it's in the past now. She says, doing her best to erase the situation from her memory. What are we doing to get back at Loki? I have a plan that can be implemented tonight. Are you in? Tom asks with a vicious smirk on his face. Obviously, what's the plan? That night, a plan was put into action. Loki may have taken things a bit too far with Lady Sif, and he definitely took things too far when he involving the palace guards, so Tom decided to respond in kind. Sadly, since the failure of his scheme against Tom, Loki has had his guard up waiting for the impending revenge. That night, Tom and Sif crept into Loki's bedchambers. Sif isn't a stealth expert and neither is Tom, but thankfully they have magic as a crutch to lean on and make things simple. Tom quieted any possible noise they could make from footsteps to breathing to accidental sneezes. He also made them invisible, which was confusing at first as Sif didn't have any way to see where Tom was. Thankfully, Tom used a sort of locator spell so she can sense where he is. Of course, Loki had a lot of security in place to protect himself, but Tom didn't spend the majority of his life studying magic for nothing. After spending most of the night carefully and methodically tearing down any magic barriers, alarms, and traps, Tom and Lady Sif were finally able to get into Loki's room. The room was dark as it was the middle of the night and Loki was sound asleep on the bed with a peaceful look on his face. He looks a lot less like a douchebag villain when he's sleeping. Tom thought as they carefully crept to his bedside as not to fall for any traps. As Tom was about to start working his magic, he looked at the peaceful Loki and felt like something was off. What is it? Tom asked himself as he looked at the sleeping prince. An illusion, perhaps? Using his infrared senses, Tom saw that the sleeping Loki is in fact an illusion, while the real Loki is sleeping on the other side of the bed. This illusion was very subtle and didn't seem to have any alarms added to it, so Tom simply destroys the illusion with ease. Suddenly, the fake Loki disappeared and the real him appeared on the opposite side of the bed. Compared to his illusionary counterpart, the real Loki didn't look nearly as peaceful. In fact, he somehow managed to sleep with his normal sneer in place. Lady Sif's invisible eyes widened as she didn't expect Loki to have more defenses than what they already went through. If Tom wasn't here with her, she would have easily fallen for that. Finally seeing his target, Tom wandlessly and wordlessly casts the bewitched sleep charm on Loki, pushing the second prince into a very deep sleep. All right, we can speak now. Tom whispers as he removes the magic that silences their speech. Sif's eyes go wide as she looks straight at Loki, expecting him to wake up at any moment. Relax, I cast a spell that put him in a deep sleep. He won't be waking up anytime soon, so we only have to worry about a third party hearing us. Just whisper and we should be okay. Tom explains as he fished a purple-colored potion from his pocket. What's that? Lady Sif asked with a low whisper. This is what will get us our payback. Tom smirks as he walks over to Loki and carefully pours the potion down the sleeping prince's throat. Tom had to do this extremely carefully, as Loki could choke or even drown in his sleep. Once the potion vial was empty, Tom turned to Sif and motioned for them to go. What? That's it? She asked as Tom was already halfway out the window. Yeah, you'll see the results tomorrow. Tom says as he jumps out the window followed by a curious Lady Sif. The next morning, Lady Sif was beyond curious about what that potion would do to Loki. Tom wouldn't reveal anything as he wanted it to be a surprise for her. Leaving her bedchambers, Lady Sif went to get some breakfast in the dining hall and bumped into a beautiful black-haired woman along the way. She was dressed in a man's clothes and wore a very familiar-looking sneer that reminded Sif of a certain prince. This marks the end of part 40 of the story, I'm Vōldēmōrt. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe the video to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.